Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. I see we have no regrets. We're a full house. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Thank you. How about a mover and seconder for Committee of the Whole? Councillor Duddick and Councillor Johnston, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Council is now resolved into Committee of the Whole, which allows for a slightly relaxed tone of meeting and a greater exchange of information from public delegations. Council, the first item before you tonight is the consent item, the subdivision agreement. How do you wish to deal with this consent item? Councillor Khan moves the consent item. Any discussion? All in favor? The consent item is approved. Now that brings us, there are no confidential consent items. That brings us to our public hearing item. And the public hearing item is a meeting designed to hear the information that the public has for council on this planning proposal. And a decision will not be made by council tonight, but rather staff will take into account the information the public may present, and a recommendation decision will be brought to council at a later time. If a person or public body doesn't make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submission to the Town of Oakville in respect of a proposed official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and or plan of subdivision or condominium, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of Town Council to the Ontario Municipal Board and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless in the opinion of the Board there are reasonable grounds to do so. Council, if you'll give your attention now to our planner, Lee Musson will walk you through a synopsis of the report that you've read. Lee?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council. This evening I'm here to present to you a statutory public meeting for an application submitted by Trafalgar Oaks Development to permit the development of a 4-story, 13-unit building with 22 parking spaces. The application was received on March the 1st of this year and was deemed complete on March the 12th. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to obtain any further public input from the public related to this application. Staff are not making a recommendation at this time. We will be just asking council to receive the staff report. The site is located on the west side of Trafalgar Road, south of Dunn Street, north of Randall Street. It's municipally known as 156 and 160 Trafalgar Road. The property is approximately 0.09 hectares in size with 29 meters of frontage on Trafalgar Road. In 2009, a 2-story commercial building located at 156 Trafalgar Road was demolished, as was a dwelling just to the north. The site is currently vacant. Land uses to the south consist of a 2-story building containing an office, beyond which is a place of worship in Randall Street. To the north is a 2.5-story mixed-use building, which is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, beyond which is Dunn Street. To the west is a 3-story, 6-unit townhouse development with a rear lane fronting onto Dunn Street, beyond which is the 16 Mile Creek. And then to the east is Trafalgar Road with Trafalgar Lodge and 2 1- to 1.5-story dwellings. This is just an elevation of the front of the building as it would face Trafalgar Road. It gives you the context on the right side of the designated heritage building. So the elevation of the building as it looks south, the elevation of the building to the north, adjacent to the heritage building, and the elevation of the building as it faces the residents who reside on Dunn Street. In terms of the site plan, access to the site will be from Trafalgar Road. Currently, there's a 2.73 meter easement in favor of the property to the south and a corresponding easement on the southern property in favor of the subject lands. There is no change proposed to the easement. At the grade level, there are 6 parking spaces proposed, 2 within a garage and 4 open-air parking spaces with the building covering the top. There is a ramp leading towards the underground parking. It's at the rear of the property. The underground parking level will contain 16 parking spaces. And the ground floor will have 2 residential units, approximately 900 to 1,800 square feet in size, the 6 parking spaces, and again, the ramp to the underground parking lot. The proposed setback of the ramp to the residence along Dunn Street is 0.94 meters. Existing proposed stair tower is 3 meters, and the balance of the building on the ground floor is 6 meter setback. The applicant is proposing a 3 meter setback to the north, which is adjacent to the Heritage Building, 3 meters from Trafalgar Road, and 3.25 meters to the property to the south. It should be noted that the second, third, and fourth floors will maintain a 3 meter setback from the residence on Dunn Street. The building will cantilever over top of the ramp, and the green line shows the extent of the proposed building. The second floor contains 4 residential units as well. They range in size again from 900 square feet to 1,800 square feet. There's no outdoor amenity space proposed, on the second floor, and the second and third floor. In terms of the fourth floor, there's 3 residential units proposed. These units range in size from 1,300 to 1,400 square feet. These units do have balconies proposed, 3 of which are oriented towards Trafalgar Road, and 1 balcony that's oriented to the south. The Livable Oakville plan designates the land as Central Business District, which permits a 4-story height maximum. The lands are also within the downtown Oakville growth area. The staff report before you this evening outlines a number of the policies that will be evaluated as part of the future recommendation report to you. The applicant is intending to develop the lands in accordance with the town's official plan. The lands have 2 zonings on them. The southern portion of the site is zoned C3R, and the northern portion of the site is zoned RO4. The RO4 zone permits detached dwellings, whereas the C3R zone permits a range of commercial uses and residential uses. I prepared a zoning comparison chart for you. The applicant is looking to rezone the northern portion of the site from RO4 to C3R and leave the southern portion of the site C3R subject to site-specific regulations. The existing C3R, in terms of front yard setback, permits 4 meters. The applicant is proposing 3. The side yard setback to the southerly lot line is permitted under a C3R zone for 0 meters. And the applicant is proposing 3.25 meters. The side yard setback to the northerly lot line, which would be adjacent to the Heritage Building, under the C3R zone is 3 meters. The applicant is maintaining the 3 meter setback. The rear yard abutting a residential zone, which would be abutting the Dunn Street residence, permitted under the bylaw is 3 meters. The building itself will maintain the 3 meters. However, the underground ramp will be 0.94 meters. Under the existing C3R zone, the building height is 10 meters. The applicant is looking at 13.5 meters, and the maximum number of stories is 3 meters, and the applicant is proposing 4. The current zoning bylaw does require a buffer strip at 3 meters. The applicant is proposing 0.94 to the underground ramp and 3 meters to the building. And again, the applicant is looking for a reduction in parking for the site to 1.5 spaces per unit, whereas the zoning bylaw permits 2. There are a number of matters that need to be considered. There was a public information meeting that was held on May the 1st, which was attended by approximately 15 residents. A number of issues identified through the public information meeting and through the processing of the application include opportunities to retain the trees on the site, an evaluation of the impact of the development of the trees on the abutting properties, traffic generated from the proposed use and impact on the existing road network, the appropriate regulations relating to the built form, for example, setbacks to the building and parking ratios, intensity of development on the site in terms of density and height, impacts on adjacent land uses, impact on heritage resources, and the transition between the development and the existing uses, and also the availability of infrastructure. Written correspondence received to date have been included within the staff report, and they're attached as Appendix A, and I understand there has been, since the writing of this report, some additional correspondence has been submitted to the town, which I believe has been circulated to you this evening. In terms of next steps, the application has been submitted to internal and external departments and agencies for review. We will complete that review and bring forward a recommendation report to council. A date hasn't been set. I'm expecting the fall. And as such, staff are putting forth this recommendation to you, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lee. There's questions from council. Councillor Bird.
Yeah, you talked about I find, quite frankly, this issue or this development is talked through, there's three separate sections. If you've gone through tonight's agenda, that it refers to the same issue. The first one I have a question is this, you mentioned two zonings. Does that fall under the term split zoning? That's on bylaw 2013-065, 2.3.2, talks about what happens when a piece of property has two zonings on it. It's on page 20 of tonight's, I guess, addendum, or the back of the bylaw. 2013-065 talks about split zoning, and that seems to have various conditions. And so when I guess we're not making a decision. I'd just like to have a comment on that, how that complies with the 2013-65 when you come back, if that's applicable to this development. The other one is on page 9, I guess, of the Heritage Committee. Were their comments going to be included in the report as well as part of the circulating portion, or do we just talk to agencies like fire and transit?
The Heritage Committee was circulated this application. One of the issues identified that will need to be discussed further in the future recommendation report will be the heritage issues. So the heritage comments will be taken into consideration.
That's the Heritage Committee.
Yes.
Comments on the application and to this council. Okay, I guess that's all I've got right for now. And the question of parking is, of the 23 spots that they have, is there any tandem parking? Are they all readily accessible?
There is tandem parking proposed in the underground.
There's also tandem parking?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Lee? Thank you very much, council. Madam Clerk, I understand we have members of the public here to delegate on this matter. Would you call the first delegation, please?
The first delegation is Denise Baker from Townsend and Associates, representing the residents of Dunn Street townhouses.
Welcome, Ms. Baker. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, just before this one, hoping that we can put that up. I can just put up an overhead. While we're waiting for that to come up.
We need an overhead shot. I imagine it'll come up.
Imagine it will.
It's coming up. I'm getting a signal that it's going to come.
Thank you.
It's a slow signal. There you go.
Thank you.
And it'll zoom in, I imagine, eventually. Was it Bob and Doug who said zoom in, zoom in? There you go.
Thank you very much.
There you go. I think you're all set up now.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. It's good to be here before you today. I represent a number of neighboring landowners with respect to this property, and specifically the landowners to the west of this property along Dunn Street. Just in terms of orientation, my clients' properties, for the most part, back directly onto the proposed development, with one of them just a little bit further down Dunn Street, and therefore would almost side on the property. Many of my clients have already made individual written submissions on the application, which are appended to the staff report for this matter, but are very concerned with the proposed development and have taken it upon themselves to retain Townsend and Associates. It's important to set the context of this application when making a decision on it, and Ms. Musson, I believe, fairly described the surrounding areas, but I just wanted to add to that a bit. The lands are, as we understand them, designated CBD in the Livable Oakville Plan and within the downtown growth area. And while downtown is identified as an area of growth, it's to be remembered that that growth is to be in the order of 80 units over the lifetime of this plan. The subject lands are the most northerly property designated CBD along Trafalgar Road. Therefore, by virtue of this location, any development on this property should appropriately respect the transition between the CBD to the south and the stable residential area to the north. This is the last property of the CBD designation. As you can see in Figure 1 of the staff report, which is essentially what I have up before you, the proposed building doesn't serve as a gradual transition in terms of building height or, in fact, built form between the CBD and the stable residential buildings to the north. In addition, it should be kept in mind that the property directly to the north is the Chisholm House, a Part 4 designated heritage buildings, as are two of the buildings directly across the street on Trafalgar Road. And also, I would want to point out, and I've brought it with me, the Trafalgar Road Heritage Conservation District. While this property is not within the district, it's interesting to note that the boundary of the Heritage Conservation District incorporates Trafalgar Road itself in front of the subject property. I take that to mean that it's not intended that Trafalgar Road will be widened, and therefore, from a built form perspective, the buildings fronting onto Trafalgar Road should respect the narrow paved portion of Trafalgar Road. And I submit to you that this building is too tall and is at a scale that doesn't respect the heritage character of the Trafalgar Road as captured in the Heritage Conservation District. Further, Council, through Livable Oakville, has seen it appropriate to identify a number of criteria in Section 11.1.9 of the plan, which is intended to maintain and protect the existing neighborhood character. The applicant's planning justification report is silent with respect to how the proposal meets these criteria. While these criteria may be considered to only apply to development within stable residential communities, you, Council, saw fit to apply this criteria to any residential units in this area through Section 13 of the plan. I submit to you that the proposal, in fact, doesn't meet this criteria, and for your convenience, Ms. Musson has fairly laid out this criteria on page 9 of her staff report. As proposed, it's our submission that the proposal does not meet the policy intent of Livable Oakville in terms of transition between the land use designations between the CBD to the south and the residential to the north, nor does it respect the heritage character of the area. It must be remembered that the 4-story height limit in the CBD is a maximum. It would not be good planning to suggest then that every site in the CBD is appropriate for a 4-story height limit. The plan must be read as a whole, and when done so, I submit to you that the maximum height permitted in the CBD is not appropriate for this location. The transitional nature of this property is fairly reflected in the zoning, which, as Ms. Musson indicated, identifies the southern portion of the property as CBD or as C3R, and the northern portion as R04. That indicates clearly that this is intended to be a transitional property. These zones, the C3R zone and the R04 zone, as you're well aware, have very different criteria, very different regulations in terms of coverage, height, setbacks, landscape buffer requirements. The applicant is seeking to rezone the northern portion of the property to C3R from R04, and then is further seeking exceptions to the C3R regulations. And I submit to you that the regulations that they're seeking are more fitting for a property in the core of the CBD as opposed to on the fringe. As you recall from Ms. Musson's chart that she just put up, the proposed height for this property in the zoning is 3 stories or 10 meters, which is not the maximum of 4 stories. And I believe this is a reflection of the fact that this is intended to be a transitional property, not a core downtown 4-story property. The applicant is proposing to have a property that's 13.5 meters in height, which I submit is not acceptable for this transitional area, and will create a situation whereby privacy issues and overlook on the surrounding properties will in fact be inevitable. Further, the applicant is seeking to remove the requirement for a rear yard setback, or to be fair, to 0.94 to the parking, the underground parking, and more importantly, the effective elimination of the required buffer strip, all of which I submit to you do not demonstrate compatibility with the abutting residential properties. So to summarize, my client's primary concerns with respect to the development application relate to the proposed height of 4 stories, and we submit will have an adverse negative impact on their use of their land due to overlook and loss of privacy. We believe it's an inappropriate transition from the CBD to the residential communities to the north, east, and west. And remember, these are just our residential communities, stable residential communities on 3 sides of this property. We submit that a transition similar to what was proposed on the east side of Reynolds Street between the office building and the stable residential community in the form of townhouses is something that's more appropriate for this site. The second concern, the proposed setbacks and elimination of required buffer strip, which is a result of the overdevelopment of the site, will affect my client's use and enjoyment of their lands, particularly due to the ramp to the proposed parking garage being located along the rear property line of the subject lands, immediately adjacent to my client's rear yard amenity space, which is in the form of raised decks. With respect to the preservation of trees, the applicant's arborist report doesn't in fact recognize the trees that are on my client's property very close to the shared property line. They do recognize one of the trees on the southern property and indicate that will be preserved, and they do recognize a shared tree on the northern property line and indicate that will be preserved, but completely ignore the trees on my client's property. The proposal actually seeks to remove 12 of the 15 trees on the site. Of the 3 that they're intending on preserving, it's the one to the south actually on the south property, the one on the shared property with the north, and 1 town tree. They're also seeking to remove a town tree as well. The clients have substantial concerns as how any replanting would take place given how little landscape space is available for the replanting of any of these trees. My clients have a substantial retaining wall in their rear yard as well, and this is their 4th concern. And I'm well aware that council has limited opportunity. You can see it all along here, and I'm well aware council has limited opportunity to protect retaining walls on private lands, but I submit to you that the integrity of this retaining wall will be affected by the fact that the applicant is proposing a 0.94 meter setback to the underground garage ramp. The concern with respect to this retaining wall would of course be mitigated if the required setback of 3 meters was respected. There are also concerns with respect to the amount of parking proposed and the traffic impacts associated with the proposed development. I'm advised by my clients that they have had the opportunity to have some discussion with Ms. Musson leading up to this evening. My client would welcome any further discussions with staff to review their concerns. My client would also welcome the opportunity to have discussions with the developer, as I'm optimistic that a number of these concerns could be addressed with the proper size, scale, and massing and built form of development on the proposed site. I want to be clear here, my clients aren't suggesting that these lands should remain vacant. Absolutely not. My clients are suggesting that the application should be, or that the land should be developed with an application that in fact respects the transition and respects the fact that it really sits on the fringe of a stable residential neighborhood. In summary, the proposal does not take into account the proposed transition, and it doesn't take into account many of the criteria in section 11.1.9 of the Livable Oakville Plan, which are criteria that have been fundamental to this council. We look forward to continuing to work with staff and the developer if they are inclined to meet with us. And subject to any questions from council, those are my submissions.
Thank you very much for your submission. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. As Councillor Bird mentioned, he referred to the minutes from the Oakville Heritage Advisory Committee meeting.
Thank you.
And some of those were, the committee felt that the size is too tall and dwarfs the heritage properties. It was indicated that the development would also be a hindrance to the adjacent Chisholm House, and that the committee expressed concern about conserving the context of the area. I take it you concur with all those statements from the Heritage Advisory Committee?
Thank you, Councillor. And through you, Your Worship, I have had an opportunity to review the minutes of that meeting, and I think there's no better example of how the Heritage Committee is probably accurate in its comments by looking at what we have above you. As you can see, where the roof line of the Chisholm House meets the roof line of this proposed building, which I think very clearly demonstrates how what's proposed dominates the Chisholm House, which is an important heritage resource to the town of Oakville.
When looking at the first bullet from the minutes, there is an issue with the proportion of the building on the lot, and the massing seems to be excessive. So that you'd concur with that one based on your comments.
I would, thank you, and through your worship, I would certainly concur with the proportionality, not only as it relates to what's on either side of it, but what relates to my client's lands, and in fact, as it relates to the portion of Trafalgar Road within the Heritage Conservation District as a narrow street. I think that building from a built form perspective just dwarfs all of those adjacencies.
Thank you.
Councillor Elgar?
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Question, can you put up the retaining wall again,
Sure.
please? And I know what you said, like the applicant, he's proposing a .94 meter setback from his property line.
Correct.
With the retaining wall, do you know what the setback is from the property line of that retaining wall?
To this retaining wall?
Yes.
I believe this retaining wall I can't swear to this, but I believe it sits on the property line, just inside the property line.
So it got approval for a 0 meter setback then?
The retaining wall, presumably.
Wow.
I'm not sure if it needed a setback or if it was.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Khan?
Thanks, Mr. Baker. The parcel of land that we're talking about, it's the most northerly part of the central business district, right?
Correct.
Is that what you refer to as the transition space, or is that the gateway, or is it the same thing?
I believe Ms. Musson has identified a number of gateway policies that would apply in her staff report to this property, and I think this property forms part of that gateway because of its transitional nature. It is, up Trafalgar Road is the most northerly two properties in the CBD designation.
And according to the policies that we have on gateways, it says where development represents a transition between different land use designations or housing forms, a gradation in building height shall be used. So what kind of things are we anticipating or contemplating by that requirement? What kind of gradation would be suitable?
From a building height and a built form perspective, in my opinion, thank you, townhouses.
Not the tiered effect where there's a little step back. Would that not accommodate that?
On a lot of this size, I think it's very difficult to achieve that with any sort of good design in an apartment form. Remember, there's less than 30 meters of frontage here, so to have step backs across 30 meters of frontage, there's a number of lots in Oakville that have more than 30 meters of frontage.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you represent the residents on Dunn Street, but what can you tell me east of this development? I understand that there's 1 or 2 story buildings, and that's also in the transition period as well, or transition space.
Sure. East, if I recall correctly, the property that I would consider the transitional property on the east side of Trafalgar Road would be Trafalgar Lodge, the seniors' home. And then north of that are 2 detached dwellings, both of which are, I believe, designated designated heritage, and then to the north of that is Georgia Square on the east side of Trafalgar Road. Trafalgar Lodge, if I recall correctly, and I will defer to my friends to the right of me, I would suggest is at most 2 stories.
Right, because our report talked about the 2 other properties. It said 1 or 2 stories, but it didn't describe how many stories Trafalgar Lodge was. And I'm just wondering, because that's also, that's also as a gateway, how compatible is that to the application before us today?
At Trafalgar Lodge, I think it's substantially lower in height. So I think it more appropriately transitions between the detached dwellings that are north of it, the heritage detached dwellings that are north of it, into the central business district proper, if you will. Thank you.
Ms. Baker, thank you very much for your information. Your clients, their built form, I take it as townhouses?
It is townhouses to the rear, and then one of them further down is a detached dwelling.
And when were those towns built, do you know?
20 years ago.
Okay. So, so there's an example before us of how a previous council dealt with the edgewise development here.
Thank you. Yes, there is. And a more recent example is to dealing with the edges on the east side of Reynolds Street between the for lack of a better term, the Melrose office building and the single detached dwellings to the north of that, also townhouses as approved by council.
Yes, thank you for reminding us of that. We went through that one together, as I recall.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much for your information tonight.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
Next delegation is David Capper from Weston Consulting, here representing the applicant.
Mr. Capper, good to see you again.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council.
Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. My name is David Capper. I appear before you this evening on behalf of the owner of the property and the applicant for the development proposal that's in front of you. We're here to let you know that we've read the staff report that's been provided by town staff. We have read all the comments that have been received. We have read the heritage report provided by planning staff, as well as the minutes from the Heritage Committee. I'm happy to report that we've had one meeting in particular with the property owner to the north, Mr. Rick Day, as well as his planning consultant, Ms. Ruth Victor. And we've identified a couple of the issues that they have with respect to the proposed development. If I could, certainly Ms. Victor's correspondence is included in the staff report as an appendix. And if I could just summarize the 3 main points of concern. The first is the interface between our proposed building and the heritage property, and how that interface is effectively dealt with through the process. Excuse me. They've identified the concern with respect to the possibility of placement of balconies in the portion of the side yard as it relates to where there's actual built form on the property to the north. And then thirdly is the possibility of providing some form of maintenance easement, if you will, along our client's property immediately south of the building facade. The building actually is located on the property line, and in the absence of said easement, Mr. Day technically has no legal right of getting onto the property to being able to be allowed to have any sort of repair and maintenance occur for his building. So we've engaged our client with respect to those 3 issues. In our meeting with Mr. Day, we had Alex Temporelli, who is the heritage architect who had provided the heritage impact assessment for this proposal. And as an addendum to the HIA, Mr. Temporelli is going to prepare some kind of an appropriate context plan as to how we can deal with that interface between the 2 properties. I'm also happy to report that we only found out this morning that the area residents have retained legal counsel. I did reach out to Ms. Baker this morning to see if it's possible that we could set up a meeting with the residents. To date, although we've received the correspondence, we have no way of linking the correspondence provided by residents to any specific properties, so we're unable to respond with a design response. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to, certainly having heard Ms. Baker's and their clients' concern raised this evening, we're hopeful that we're going to be able to meet with them, hear the concerns, and see if there's any possibility of resolving some of those concerns through design.
Thank you very much for that.
That's it. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Capper? Councillor Elgar.
If you read the report in detail probably a week ago, and I'm thinking, as an astute person, you probably when looking up the names, you have the ability to find out just exactly where they live, though. Am I correct in that?
No, sir, I don't think you are.
Oh, okay. No, I just wondering, because I think there's kind of a common thread here where people want 3 stories rather than 4 stories. And I'm just thinking, like, being a planner, that you want to talk to them about this.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the comments, and I think it's sort of a predominant response to the development application, is this idea of transition and what is an appropriate transition for the proposed development, and i.e. this property. I think the important part to note about the Dunn Street development is that is actually a site-specific R8 zone in what is arguably an R04, which is residential low-density type of zoning, whereas an R8, at least with respect to the parent provision, is arguably a higher density type of zone. So the maximum height that's permitted in an R8 zone is 12 meters. And we were, at this point in time, we're unable to confirm exactly what the building height is for the Dunn Street townhouses. But I would suggest to you that it's in the order of around 12 meters. It's certainly higher than the property located to the north of us, Mr. Day's property. But I don't believe it's an unreasonable transition from a 3, and in one situation, 3.5-story building to a 4-story building. If I could speak further to Councillor Khan's question about gradation in building height, a transition from 3 to 4 stories, I don't know, you can't really transition from 3 to 3 stories. So I think the gradation and the transition that's described in the official plan is that increase or decrease in building height, for that matter, as you move from the lower density residential areas into the CBD. I think this is certainly reflected in the development proposal that was mentioned with respect to the Melrose townhouses. The maximum building height permitted there is 15 meters, whereas we're proposing 3.5 meters, albeit for a different built form, apartment building versus townhouses. But again, 12 meters permitted as of right on Dunn Street as a maximum building height to 13.5 meters proposed. Overall, we're talking about a 1.5 meter difference in building height.
Okay, I appreciate that. So you do understand what the residents are looking for?
Certainly, again, we understood from participating in the public information meeting what the concern was, but ultimately we don't know who we're dealing with in terms of response. So if we are trying to mitigate these concerns, where exactly in the building are we mitigating these concerns from? If we propose a change in one area of the building, are we actually achieving the goal of mitigating those concerns? I think that's the point I was trying to make. My apologies.
Councillor Khan.
Thank you very much. Actually, you raised one of the concerns that was in the correspondence that we received from the residents. You used it to justify your application. You're saying that, well, they have 12 meters, and it's not a significant difference. And their concern is that the site to the south of you will use that exact same argument when they want to bring an application for that. They're concerned about a precedent, and you relied on a previous precedent to justify your own application.
Through your worship to Councillor Khan, I would suggest that we rely on livable Oakville as the direction with respect to building height at 4 stories. When with respect to the R8 zone, it is a site-specific zone. It does exist contextually. Precedent or not, we need to respond to the existing building height. And in accordance with the official plan, we need to provide a transition from that building height. And I think that the application before you this evening does so appropriately.
Okay, so you compared your application to the properties on Dunn Street. But what about your application with respect to the properties across Trafalgar?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Khan, certainly the Trafalgar Lodge is a two-story building, and certainly there are, unfortunately it's not shown on this particular air photo, but the transition line I'll call it the northern transition line for the CBD, sorry, I don't have my official plan. Essentially, it runs the southerly property. Sure, that would be. I've got it right here, actually. So the northerly property line of the CBD, as it relates to the interface between the low-density residential designation. I think it extends not only north of our property, to the north property line, but all the way along here. And if you look at the existing building heights that exist, yes, absolutely, there's a two-story building height over here. There's a four-story building height immediately over here. Council has, there has been recent approvals for a 15-meter building, which would be very easy to achieve a four-story building height. So I think if council is looking for examples whereby that building height exists between, and arguably historical references too, where you've got a four-story building height abutting a residential low-density designation, there are a few examples that you could turn your eye to. And yes, there's certainly those parcels that are 2 stories that you could also look to. I think the summation of the comment is that 4 stories is not necessarily an inappropriate building height to have adjacent to a residential low-density designation.
Before I get cut off for being argumentative, my only concern was that I'm looking at the properties immediate to the surrounding application, the properties on Dunn Street, the 2 properties adjacent to the application, and the properties across the street, and they are, around the area of 2 stories and maybe a little bit higher for the Dunn properties. I'm just trying to determine how compatible that was, but again, being argumentative.
I think we might be into argument. I don't know what answer he can give you to that.
Other than I respect the comment.
It's always a wise answer. Councillor Byrd.
Photograph that you provided, is there any building in that whole site, I guess I don't know how far you can move it around, that would come close to what you're asking for? Existing?
Existing building in terms of close, the closest is certainly...
Bell Telephone Building and the other one, they're all 2.5 stories. And in fact, the two 2.5-story buildings came down in order to create the footprint for what you're asking for.
Through your worship, the closest reference to additional building height is to the townhouses along Dunn Street.
Where back then they were considered a spot rezoning and intended to create a precedent. I'm just now, and then we find out that they go on to 2 stories or 2.5-story townhouses, that it's a precedent for a 4-story apartment. This is the logic that you're following?
Through your worship to Councillor Byrd, the response is to the transition of building height.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Capper, for appearing and bringing your information. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
There are no further delegations listed.
Are there any other members of the public with information for council on this matter? Council, I need a motion to receive. Anyone will do. Councillor Johnston, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? The matter is received, and we look forward to a recommendation decision in due time. And I'm sure that to speak to the public who are here and to the applicant, you will receive your notice in plenty of time as this matter goes forward. And I'm sure that any conversations you can have that move us closer to a resolution will probably be well advised. I would caution against anyone interpreting. There were a few remarks made by councillors tonight that could be construed to countenance 3 stories there, and I would urge you not to take that as any kind of indication that council has made up its mind on that point. I believe there are members of council who might consider 3 remains to be justified, never mind 4. So with that, we'll thank you, and if you want to leave without disrupting us, we'll pause before we go to our next item. Otherwise, and you are, okay, so we will pause for just a moment while you do that. And when we resume, we'll be at item 3, the notice of intention to demolish on Spruce Street. Sometimes it's important to have a history, eh? I think we have to. Okay, thanks. We'll have to continue now. All right. So item 3 is where's our little? There you go. Where is Miss Shapper? Welcome, Susan. Council looks forward to your summary of the file.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. The application before you is a notice of intention to demolish that's been received for a property listed on the Oakville Heritage Register as a non-designated property of potential cultural heritage value or interest. The property at Spruce Street contains a residence that was built circa 1922, and staff is not recommending that the property be designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. As part of the staff evaluation of this notice of intention to demolish, we complete a thorough research report, which is included in your agenda under Appendix A. The research report looks into the architectural design value of the house, the historic or associative value of the house, and the contextual value of the house. Just to take you briefly around the property, the original 1922 era residence has had some significant modifications over the years. The house, which was originally a stucco-clad building, has been clad in a modern vinyl siding. The soffits have been clad in aluminum, and several of the windows have been replaced, although there are several original remaining windows. There has been an addition made to the rear of the property, and to the garage as well, which may have been the remnants of an earlier garage that was then expanded when this rear addition was put on. Staff, in our evaluation of the property, did not find any significant heritage value to the property through its associations with various property owners. The property is loosely associated with the Tuxedo Park area subdivision, as most of the properties in this area are. Tuxedo Park began developing around 1910. This property was built in 1922, and it's not considered to be an especially significant or intact example of houses in this subdivision. While that residence is historically linked to the surrounding area, staff again feel that the modifications made to this residence have essentially removed most of the cultural heritage value, and we recommend that you receive the notice of intention to demolish for the property. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Just waiting. Questions? Councillor Dudek.
If there's no questions, I'd be pleased to give you a motion to approve.
Thank you. Ms. Shafford, thank you for your information. Councillor Dudek has moved the item. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Our next discussion item, Council, is a wonderful good news story that gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce to you. We are coming up next year on the halfway point of our 10-year economic development strategy, which we adopted unanimously in 2009. And Dorothy St. George, our director, is here to present the success story to date. Ms. St. George?
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Good evening, members of council. Last month, I was before you to present the Economic Development Annual Report, and that contained information about development activity over a 12-month period, cost competitiveness, and business highlights. The report that's before you tonight is not about the development activity per se, but it's a comprehensive listing and reporting of the work that we've undertaken to realize the implementation of the economic development strategy, which was approved way back in 2009. The strategy is based on 4 key sectors, and that's where I'll begin. Engineering, finance, and insurance companies are examples of professional service companies. And this is one of our targeted sectors in the strategy. We've seen evidence of their growth in Oakville with strong office development in recent years, dotting the landscape across Oakville, much like the flowers that you see before your screen. The growth of professional services is significant and is an area of focus for economic development because we are competitively positioned to attract it. It provides employment that matches well with our employment base in Oakville. We have product on the market, and there is more being developed. Business attraction has been very successful, but there is still more opportunity in this sector, and a marketing plan is important because it will increase the awareness of the opportunity for investment in this sector. The advanced manufacturing sector is the backbone of Oakville's economy, from the Ford plant being the town's largest employer to medium and small manufacturing facilities. If you drive around Winston Park, along Spears or Wycroft, you see evidence of the many manufacturing firms in Oakville. Operating in a global marketplace, there are 2 major demands of companies: cost competitiveness and innovation. So we've been getting to know our base of manufacturing companies through corporate calling, our business leaders forum, events, and the development process. We learned that these companies need some care and tending, and we'll continue to cultivate relationships and provide assistance to them. An example is the Auto Mayors Roundtable that will be held later this year to raise awareness of the importance of the auto sector to our economy and to develop an action plan to help sustain and grow the sector. Digital media companies. This is our 3rd sector. It's often been described, digital media companies have often been described as gazelles because they're small, they're nimble, and they're mobile. They have potential for high growth, and increasingly, we see a convergence of this sector with others, such as advanced manufacturing and life sciences. In Oakville, there are many areas of support through this sector that have emerged since our strategy was approved in 2009. Sheridan College has joint research programs with industry and government funding that provides an incentive to do so. Hull-Tech, a regional innovation center, and Angel One Network provide access to funding and entrepreneurial support. And Silicon Halton provides events to engage people in this sector. In economic development, we are connecting all these resources that have emerged over the last few years with the companies here, as well as marketing Oakville as a place for digital media investment. The mobility of companies means that they will leave if they don't find an environment that's to their liking. So the initiatives that the town is taking on things like the cultural hub and midtown development are helping to create an environment that is attractive to these creative industries. And that bodes well for the increasing growth of this cluster in Oakville. And life sciences are our fourth and final target sector. The strategy set us on a path to explore the development of a life sciences and technology park or a district around the new hospital. Today, if you look at these lands, it appears that nothing is happening. But behind the scenes, there's been a great deal of consultation and visioning. We know that we have the ingredients to make a successful life sciences and technology district. We have an anchor with a large hospital now under construction. We have demonstrated that there is user interest in the vision for the park that we've developed. And we have an existing base of life science and technology companies. We know that there is a great deal of work to bring the lands to a shovel-ready state. That's the physical component of the vision. There's also programmatic work to be done that brings stakeholders to create programs and synergies that give the district added value. So right now, there are two potential investors for the lands around the hospital, one on the east, one on the west. And if these deals close, staff can work with them to help realize the vision. Otherwise, we will need to take steps to close the gap between the current state and a shovel-ready state and bring the lands closer to a place where investors have a certainty about realizing the vision for what we see there. The costs for doing that work will be identified through the budget process, and they cover things from master planning, stormwater servicing, urban design, establishing the amenity mix and the roadwork pattern. That's the physical side of it. And then there's also the programming side of incubation, whether it's real or virtual space for new companies, places and programs to connect, the types of amenities that make it a community where these people want to be, and connections to research institutions for the commercialization of research. The extent to which we use marketing to attract new investment depends on a number of factors, including product, players, and budget. And the product is what you have and what you want to emphasize. We have completed a marketing plan this year, and it shows that there should be a strong emphasis on attracting professional services sector. We know that there are many players. Every region, every municipality, province, and country is engaged in some form of marketing. So we have to be careful not to trip over each other. And we do this by being strategic in how we spend our money. We also have to recognize that the further out we get from the municipal level of marketing, the more diluted the message becomes, because there are more products in the portfolio of the marketer. For Oakville, we have one product. The region has 4. GTMA has 26. The province has many more. So there's a balance to be achieved regarding what can be done at the local level and how we can leverage the other organizations involved in the process. And where we rely on other organizations, we need to ensure that they have the right information in their hands and the protocols are in place for handling the leads. Budget is the final component of marketing, and marketing budgets for municipalities vary from base levels of $20,000 to hundreds of thousands of dollars that are spent. We are monitoring now the changes that are being made at GTMA and at Halton Region, where both organizations are engaged in business attraction initiatives. We're meeting with Halton Region on Thursday of this week to discuss their new marketing plan that they have developed. And through that work and that consultation, we'll refine our marketing plan and present that plan through the budget process. And with it, we'll have a program that complements the other initiatives with these organizations that are supporting marketing for Oakville. Oops. In conclusion, the report before you indicates that the department has completed a good portion of the deliverables it set out to accomplish. And the appendix to the report identifies the deliverables that were in the original economic strategy and provides a scorecard for the accomplishment, whether they've been completed, started, or in progress. We have made some revisions along the way, such as shifting from an infrastructure focus to connectivity in the digital media sector, and we've added some additional work involving the BIAs. But overall, the strategy is still sound in shaping our work plan for the next few years. We will be digging deeper into the targeted into the targeted sector development, implementing a marketing plan, and continuing to connect with local companies to foster an environment for a strong and diversified economy. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. St. George. Councillor Elgar, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Thank you, and thanks for your presentation. Can you help me understand how the pictures correlate with the words at the top? I'm sure I'm missing something, but when I see advanced technology and I see a person raking some soil, I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to portray.
We'll go back. I'll go back through the pictures. And that was just so I wasn't giving a lot of verbiage that was in the report and that you've spent some time reading. So the flowers and the abundance of the flowers indicate the abundance of the office growth that we're seeing in Oakville. Economic gardening is a term that's used widely through economic development professionals. So cultivating the environment, planting seeds, planting kind of the sort of tools and seeds that help companies grow. So cultivating growth of the sector is what we refer to for advanced manufacturing. Gazelles, those are the nimble digital media companies. And this is that you can look at the growth of our life science and technology park as sort of the glass half empty, because you're not seeing it on the ground, but we're seeing it as half full because we know there's some work to be done, but there's a lot of work that has gone in so far. And these are all the players, these are all the racers in the marketing game.
Ms. St. George, I'd like to salute the poetry with which you presented your report.
Councillor Elgar is not very good with symbolism. You got to remember that.
Yeah, I guess I think of digital media and animation. I thought it was a good chance to promote Sheridan College. You know, I guess I'm just on a different wavelength. I thank you.
Through you, Mayor Burton, we are actually working on a video right now for the digital media sector, and we are partnering with some local companies in that sector. We will definitely be featuring Sheridan in it.
I really appreciate that because I think, if anybody's watching on Town TV, I think they'd be interested, to show what we are doing. Thank you.
Yes, and Council, you do recall that in our unanimously adopted economic development strategy, we do make specific mention of how what we're doing there is leveraging the creative resources of what is widely recognized to be the world's very best college, Sheridan Technical Institute. And I can tell you that Sheridan is I was delighted to discover, renowned in China because of its many partnerships and great deal of activity over there. Councillor Giddings, did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Under Objective 2, create a life sciences and technology park, you talk about next steps having a facilitated scoping session. Just wondering when you're looking at holding that event.
Through you, Mayor Burton, we actually held that event last week with some consultants who had undertaken it was an internal staff meeting with the various departments involved from the Planning Commission and a consultant to work through identification of the steps to get it to a shovel-ready state.
And you're looking at a number of different areas. Would there be similar stakeholders, or will there be a crossover between that area and some of the potential other areas?
Yes, certainly. And an example would be in the digital media sector. Sheridan College has a lot of strengths, not only on the entertainment side of digital media, but on life sciences. So they have simulation, medical simulation, imaging, and so forth, elder care. So all of those areas work well with the life sciences sector.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. St. George. Council, on the weekend, for a different purpose, I happened to be engaged in a conversation that led to doing a reality check on Canada's GDP. And I know that it's popular to think that we're a resource-based economy. And in fact, I've heard things said like 80% of the economy is resources. And here's what we found when we went and looked at Stats Canada. The GDP component from the resource sector is 4.5%. Manufacturing is about 13%. So there's a reversal over what you might have expected. And professional, financial, insurance, real estate, and all the professional offices sector that we're interested in is actually the largest at 21%. Digital, of course, is our bet on the future, the knowledge-based creative economy, which we know is going to be a very important part of sustaining the livability that we want. And as for life sciences, we are in the middle of the construction of what will be the second largest hospital in Ontario. And when it opens in 2016, it'll have 3,000 employees. It'll be pretty much Ford's rival for employment at the time. So these are interesting and exciting times. Councillor Knoll?
Thank you, Worship. I have a question with respect to Spark. You referred to the main tenant moved, and we know that that was a few years back. That was Spark Studios, correct?
Through Mayor Burton, that's correct. That was Pipeline Studios.
I'm sorry, Pipeline Studios, not
Pipeline
Spark.
Studios was in the Spark facility and actually outgrew the facility and found other space in another municipality.
Yeah, they're on Main Street in Hamilton. Did we ever talk about why, or did we ever do an exit interview to find out why they chose Hamilton over Oakville?
We actually worked with the company to try and find a suitable location for them here. Cost was a major factor, and they found the type of space that they wanted in that municipality.
So what have we learned from that experience? If we're going to be pursuing the digital media sector, or the digital arts sector, how do we learn from that experience to try to build our inventory for facilities in the future? Is there something specific we can take away from that?
Through you, Mayor Burton, there are a couple of things. One is the environment for living. The other is the environment for working. A lot of digital media companies like the funky warehouse space that you don't typically find here. But finding space, and we have been working with some realtors to finding space to co-locate smaller companies that are moving out or starting out on their own, and they find that kind of space works for them. The other is the environment for creative industries, and they like to be in a happening place. And as I said in my presentation, the development of Midtown, near mobility hub that offers them ready access into a big city like Toronto, or the cultural hub development that's going to give them more things to do in the Oakville area will be a stronger draw for them.
It just seems that Hamilton is pillaging they're sort of the second location for the entertainment industry, the film, television, and digital media industry, and I just wonder how we can try to take back some of what should be ours.
Well, through you, Mayor Burton, a lot of the work we're doing is with our staff is connecting to those companies. Okay. And one of our staff members is going to be on a trade mission with the province with 2 or 3 of the Oakville companies that will be participating, and that are also working with us on preparing that video that showcases Oakville as a cluster and the strengths being around the anchor at Sheridan College.
And for what it's worth, I think we are funky, but anyway. The other thing is with respect to Spark itself, I had reason to be at Sheridan in the Spark Center a couple weeks ago, and I noticed how almost vacuous it is. It's a big empty shell of itself right now. And I know that Haltech is one of the tenants in there. Is there a business plan going forward for the Spark Center to better utilize the facility, to market that capability and the resources that exist there?
Through you, Mayor Burton, Sheridan College is undertaking some internal restructuring of their physical resources, but they will always be available to provide space for those startup companies. And they're currently providing space where companies can work with students on research projects that they're getting, for which they're getting federal funding. So they are making space. It might not necessarily be in that Spark, the original Spark facility, but there will be space on campus for those companies.
And last question, when we originally approved our MOU, I guess it was, I'm not sure what the nature of the document or what the nature of the arrangement was with Sheridan for Spark, I don't know, 100 years ago when we did that, we contributed a fair amount of cash, I believe, to the project. Is that correct?
Mayor Burton, I believe it was $1 million that the town contributed.
Do we still have any input as to what happens there, or is that ship sort of sailed? Is that MOU gone? Is this something that you're still directly involved with, or on behalf of the town, or is this simply a Sheridan initiative now?
It's run its course, okay, is a short answer for that agreement and that space, but we are certainly working with various departments at Sheridan to provide help to companies in other ways.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Knoll, I've heard tell that you're now a film and television producer, so make sure you stay in Oakville and don't go to Hamilton.
Trust me, it's not an issue.
Okay.
This is a funky town.
Well, if it's funky enough for you, it's funky enough for me. Can I look to you for the recommendation? Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Knoll. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried. Council, would you like to move the recommendations in the confidential discussion items, or would you like to go into camera to discuss them? Councillor Khan.
Mind going into camera for the first one?
Councillor Khan moves that we go into a session closed to the public for the purpose of considering litigation or potential litigation subject to solicitor-client privilege. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Madam Clerk, could you arrange the chamber for a session closed to the public? All right. Council now resumes its meeting in public, having met in a session closed to the public having to do with litigation or potential litigation and matters subject to solicitor-client privilege. And the chair now turns to Councillor Khan. I need your motion in public to approve the items C1, C2, and C3 as amended by council. Yes. So I'm giving you them back from her. I'm looking for your motion. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. And the clerk will publish those in the minutes when we get there. That brings us to the advisory committee minutes, Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee. And how do you want to deal with those? Councillor Dudek moves the recommendation. And we have a delegation being David Eckler. Mr. Eckler, welcome. Council looks forward to your information on the matter.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of Council, for allowing me to speak on this matter. Even though it's quite late in the agenda, I hope everyone's still alert enough. Now, is this facing the right way? I'm putting something down here to be shown. I don't know if I should be placing it in my direction. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Okay, so just for everyone's recollection, this relates to what we call the Walton Manse, or the longer name, the Walton Memorial Church Manse House, which was relocated from 144 Bronte to 39 Jones Street. And we're really in the stages, or the owner is in the stages of renovation and exterior restoration work, finishing the exterior restoration work, now getting into the interior renovation work. There is a homeowner now. There is an actual steward for the heritage building, which is good news, because it means it's not for in the heritage business, the best steward of the best way to preserve a heritage building is to have an owner as a steward. My comments on the application are that this is an application that the owner has asked to be submitted to replace some of the existing heritage buildings with new replica exact reproduction windows. And what you're seeing on this photo is the circles are actually from heritage staff that represent the windows that they prefer not to be or they would recommend not to be replaced. And so the owner has agreed in this application that these all be restored and that all the other windows, the second story one on the front and the side windows, be replaced with reproduction windows. And I'd like to just make a few points on that. Heritage staff and Heritage Committee rejected or denied the application or the request based on standards of conservation, the standards for the conservation of heritage places in Canada, which does recommend that one restore historic windows. And we do lots of heritage projects, both that restore heritage windows and replicate them. And we're asking, in this case, to provide reproduction windows for several reasons. When the building was moved, I really think this is a one-off case compared to others that would need to abide by that stricture of heritage standard, because when the building was moved, lots of the openings sort of pivoted. There was some settling and movement in the building, and some of those windows can't even be operated now because they're trapezoidal instead of rectangular, if you can imagine. And that's one reason. It's had a lot of movement to it, and it's affected the window openings quite a bit. The second reason is that what's being asked for here is really quite selective. We are looking to try and keep the front facade exactly as it was originally, and we are only asking for this second story window and the ones on the sides to be replaced, because really the one on the second floor at the front facade is set back, and the ones on the side you are really seeing obliquely when you see it on the street. The third reason is there is, as the code gets changed over the years, there is increasing R values required for exterior walls. Now that there is an owner, he wants to abide by what's called the SB 12 regulation of the OBC, which increases our value from what it used to be even just a few years ago. And we would like the energy efficiency of the new windows to complement and continue the same R value, or approach the same R value of the walls. And we're concerned that if you have a much greater R value in the walls and than you do in the windows, it becomes a gap where a lot of the moisture from condensation and so forth collects, and it actually leads to deterioration. So that would be the fourth reason. The fifth reason is really that we believe that this is a fair tiered approach, the application that is, because we are trying to keep the exterior windows and the front facade as they are and work more on the ones that are less prominent. And at the same time, there's a stewardship issue involved too. This is a homeowner who has bought it. He wants to do the best quality renovation inside and restoration on the exterior, and really would like to have it the most usable, livable quality. And I think there are two schools of thought in terms of how well insulated you can make an existing single glazed window, even if you put on on top of it, a traditional storm. So this owner is of the school of thought that one can match exactly, and we've assured him that we have in the past done an exact profile replica of the sash frames of the windows. And we aren't talking about very complicated windows here. These are 1/1. They're not multi-pane windows. So for all those reasons, we would ask very kindly council to endorse the application and not follow the recommendation of the Heritage Committee.
Mr. Eckler, thank you for bringing information. Who is the owner?
His name is Mark, and I'm sorry, but actually it should be in the application.
And did he acquire it from Amica?
He acquired it from Amica. There's still some shared work that they have to do together. Amica has still some work to do on the exterior.
I don't need his name. I was only trying to ascertain whether Amica had was any longer the owner. So thank you for establishing that. Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I would like to think, sir, I'm asking you a question. I would like to think that when your client, presume it's your client, acquired this property from Amica, that he or she was aware of the conditions that had been imposed on that property by the council. I would like to think that that was the case, that your client knew. Am I right?
No, I'm not sure that he was very much aware about the conditions of the windows and...
Well, I'm surprised. Can you tell me why he would not be aware of what he was buying?
He was not aware of the restrictions on the windows to not be replaced. And part of the reason is when Amica went through, because we've gone through about 3 heritage permits with this, and we never, it was in none of those heritage permits was it ever an issue of replacing the windows. It was never brought up.
Was your client aware, was he not aware that this was a designated heritage property?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. He was aware that it was a designated heritage property.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. That answers my question.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Are you sure? Councillor Khan has a question.
Thank you. Actually, I just want you to brief me again about, I heard you talking about if the windows weren't replaced, there'd be moisture buildup or something. Can you explain that again? And by the way, what's your
oh, I'm sorry.
Are you an architect? Or
I am an architect. I'm a heritage architect. We work on lots of heritage structures. And some, as I mentioned, we do replace windows with reproduction windows. In fact, probably a majority of them we do. What my concern is, as the R values increase, it used to be you'd have an R19 on the exterior wall. And I guess this is through you, Mr. Mayor, but we used to have R19 on the exterior wall. Now that's gone up to anywhere from R24 to R27 with the new regulations. Well, when that hits an R even 18 with the double glaze, I think that's a closer continuity. If it hits whatever a single glaze would be, which is probably something like R5 or R6 or something quite minimal, then you're going to get condensation at the edge of that frame. I mean, we went forward with the Heritage Committee. I made my arguments there. I think they've had different discussions otherwise from other window manufacturers and other presentations, but I feel that there, and we have seen it in heritage buildings, that there is a buildup of condensation on the frames of the windows and then right under the sill and into the wall. There's always moisture that collects there. And I feel that a closer R value between the window and the walls will significantly reduce that buildup of condensation.
Councillor Khan, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eckler, for your information. Ms. Huckwith, I have a contract question for you. I was under the impression that Amica had, under our agreements, a duty to restore this property, and it sounds like what they did is they sold it to a third party, and so what's gone on here? Have we lost the ability to enforce our requirements? Has Amica tried to, what's going on?
This is a discussion that needs to be had in camera?
I'm not sure it is.
Any agreements that we have with Amica are still enforceable against Amica. I don't know for these particular agreements what we did in terms of for the restoration in the new location. And, you know, there's many tools against whether it's Amica or the new owner, and I'm not aware of what securities we have.
Okay, but our
and what the terms
heritage, our standards remain our standards.
Our standards remain our standards. We have a number of tools, whether through property standards to ensure that restoration occurs, or through the legislation itself, which requires that permits be obtained for anything which is done. So I regard the contracts with Amica as sort of a side issue as to who pays us if we have to go in and do work to restore.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Duddick?
Thank you. Through you to staff, Carolyn, maybe you can explain for the benefit of maybe some members of council regarding Part 4 designation. The bylaw that's associated with that would stipulate the attributes of the entire building and why we designated it. Would that not be something that, similar to what our legal staff had referred to, it gives it the teeth in terms of enforcement of maintaining those various attributes?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Duddick, there are two things at play. There's a heritage designation bylaw, and one of the heritage attributes in the designation bylaw is the historic wood windows, which is why staff recommended that they be restored instead of replaced, because our guidelines and the standards and guidelines that Mr. Eckler mentioned recommend restoration versus replacement. The second thing is that there's a heritage easement agreement on the property. This is registered on title, so it doesn't really matter if ownership changes, but the restoration is required as part of that, and securities were taken out on the property for that as well.
Great to hear it. Thank you. Glad you got up to give us that. I think we're done on this item, Mr. Eckler.
I was going to add to that.
No, I think we're done. So, Councillor Robinson.
Are you ready for a motion on this?
I am, sir.
Well, sir, I would be pleased to give you a motion that we approve the staff recommendation. And speaking to that, I would just like to point out, everybody will remember that for 2 years we went through hoops on this particular property, deciding how we were going to get the Amica site approved in view of certain situations. And this was the arrangement that we made to move it where it is now, sell them the land. They bought it, they owned the house, they sold it, and what they sold went with the new owner. And I have no hesitation at all about supporting the staff recommendation. In fact, I'm surprised we spent as long talking about it as we did. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson, and you spoke for me. Any other speakers? All those in favor? So he's given us the exact recommendation as written here. Did you want a different one?
Well, he was specifically speaking to 6C, but we're dealing with the whole committee.
Councillor, I understood you to be moving that the following recommendations pertaining to items 6A, 6B, 6C of the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee minutes from its meetings on June 18th be approved and the remainder of the minutes be received. That's exactly what he said.
Good.
And now we all understand it. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That does carry. I believe we now need to turn to item number 6 on your addendum, which is the matter about the repeal and replacement of certain bylaws. Councillor Khan. Councillor Khan moves that item. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, a motion to rise and report would be in order. Councillor Knoll, thank you. Or let's give Councillor Grant, your hands went up simultaneously. And behind you there, I see Councillor Grant. Let's give him a moment in the minutes. Councillor Grant moves that. And all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent item 1, public hearing item 2, discussion items 3, 4, and 6, confidential discussion items C1, C2, C3, and advisory committee minutes item 5, as noted by the clerk. Now a mover and seconder for this report, please. Councillor Duddick and Councillor Lapworth, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And now we're at new business, emergency, congratulatory, or condolence. Does anyone have anything? All right, then, I have two. I don't know what to start with. I'm going to start with our clerk. So, as council is aware, there's an organization called the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario, and I'm very pleased to announce that Vicky Titanic has successfully completed the intensive process to attain the association's Certified Municipal Officer, CMO, designation after your name. And we believe that this is a tremendous accomplishment and that we should regard that with pride. And I'll tell you why, because if it's a very important theme of mine, that if we're going to have an Oakville quality of life, and that's what we're determined to have, we must have an Oakville quality of staff. And thus, it's a great example for everyone to see our staff adding these distinctions to their training and their experience. And so congratulations and thank you. Now, the second thing I take some pleasure in announcing is Councillor Duddick has saved the taxpayers almost $1,000 by hand-making herself this beautiful blue velvet bedding for the chain, which formerly used to dig holes in my suits. And so my wife thanks you, I thank you, and I believe that everyone who wants the chain to look smart will thank you as well. It even has rubber treads to keep it in place on the shoulders. So on behalf of everyone, I thank you very much, Councillor Duddick, and I really appreciate it. And when yous will wear it, you'll appreciate it too. So now, for consideration and reading of the bylaws, we need a mover and seconder. Councillor Elgar, Councillor Robinson. This is for bylaw 52 and bylaw 63, 2013, 52, and 63. All in favor? Opposed? If that carries. That completes our agenda tonight. It's been great working with you, and we are adjourned. Thank you for your time and attention.